Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. In this video we're diving into 3 true scary stories, all involving water. If you enjoy the stories, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more creepy content just like this. I've worked at the marina for 3 summers now. It's a chill gig, mostly fueling boats, cleaning up trash, locking things down at night. We're a small operation on a quiet lake, the kind of place old guys bring their fishing boats and couples come to rent pontoons for the day. Nothing wild, nothing dangerous. Usually. That night, we were just about to close. Sun was low, everything bathed in the orange haze. I was sweeping the dock, earbuds in, already thinking about the leftover pizza in the fridge, when I saw a boat approaching out of the corner of my eye. It was a small center console with a dark blue hull. Nothing flashy, no name on the side. Just a single guy on board, maybe late 40s. Wiry build, sunburned face, dirty ball cap. I'd never seen him before, which was unusual. Locals all know each other, and tourists show up earlier in the day. Nobody pulls up at 8:50 p.m. I pulled out my earbuds as he aisled up. "You guys still pumping gas?" he asked. His voice was weird, flat. Not tired, not casual, just empty. I glanced at the office. My coworker had already left. Lights were off. We technically closed 10 minutes ago. "We're shutting down, but I can top you off real quick if it's not much," I said. He smiled, just barely. "Appreciate it." I climbed down, unlocked the pump, and grabbed the nozzle. As I filled the tank, I noticed there was no gear on board. No fishing rods, no cooler, not even a life jacket. Just him and the boat. "You out here long?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Not really," he said. "Just passing through." That didn't make sense. There's no through route on this lake. It's landlocked, surrounded by cabins and forest. I nodded anyway. When I was done, I told him the total. He handed me cash, exact change, before I even said the number, like he already knew. That should have been the first red flag. "Thanks," I said, backing up toward the dock. "Have a good one." He looked at me for a second too long, just stared. "You working late?" I hesitated. "Nah, just closing up." He nodded. "Right." Then he motored off without another word. I stood there watching him disappear into the lake's haze until the hum of his engine faded out. Something about that guy felt wrong. Not aggressive, not obviously dangerous, just wrong. I shook it off, finished up, and locked the fuel shed. Then I hopped into the marina's John boat to take it back across the lake to the maintenance dock. 5-minute ride tops. About halfway across, the engine sputtered. I tapped the choke, adjusted the throttle. It sputtered again, then completely died. "Come on," I muttered. I popped the cover and checked the fuel line. Everything looked fine. I checked the tank. Empty. That didn't make sense. I just checked it before leaving the dock. It had at least a third of the tank. I always check. It's part of protocol. I was still kneeling there when I heard it. The engine, behind me. I turned. It was him. The same guy, same boat, no lights on, just drifting silently toward me. He wasn't smiling now. "What's the problem?" he called out, voice still flat. "Ran out of gas," I said, trying to sound casual. "Pretty weird, actually." "I got some on board," he said. "Want me to toss you a line?" He was closer now, too close. My gut screamed no. "I'm good, man," I said quickly, fumbling for the paddle. "Appreciate it, though." He didn't stop approaching. "Come on, let me help." His tone changed, like he wasn't offering anymore. He was telling. By the time I stood up, his bow was practically touching mine. Then he reached out, not with a gas can, with a hand. I backed away instantly. "Hey, don't." He grabbed the side of my boat and started to climb in. That's when I snapped. I swung the paddle as hard as I could, caught him in the side of the head. He slipped, cursed, and fell into the water with a loud splash. He thrashed for a second, then went under, still grabbing the edge of my boat. I didn't wait. I jumped onto his boat, still idling, engine warm, and shoved the throttle forward. As I sped away, I looked back once. He was just bobbing in the water, treading hard, eyes locked on me like an animal. Not yelling, not begging, just staring. I didn't stop. I drove straight to the main dock and called the sheriff. When they showed up, I explained everything. They searched the lake until 3 a.m. but didn't find him. No body, no signs of distress, just an abandoned John boat floating empty in the middle of the water. I filed a full report, handed over the boat, and gave them the cash he'd used. Something about it felt off. Sure enough, later that week, they told me the serial numbers were fake, wasn't even real currency. They never found him, never identified him. The boat wasn't registered, the engine serial number had been scratched off. It was like he'd never existed. The marine installed more cameras after that, new lights too, but I don't work there anymore. I can't stand being on the water at night now. Every time I hear an engine in the dark, my stomach turns. I still see his face sometimes, just hovering in the black, reaching for my boat, waiting. I go fly fishing to get away from work, traffic, people, especially people. There's something sacred about standing in a river with no sound but the water and the line sliced in the air. I fish solo, always, and I go deep, miles away from any campground or trail. I like it when there's no one else around. That's why I chose that spot in northern Montana. It wasn't marked on any popular fishing maps. It took a little trespassing and a lot of hiking to get there, but once I did, I knew I'd found my place. Water clear as glass, trout flashing under the surface, no cell signal for miles. I set up camp near a bend in the river around noon, had my small tent nestled in the trees, cooked a little lunch, then hit the water. It was one of those perfect afternoons, blue sky, and dry buzz of insects, and the rhythmic motion of casting and retrieving. I was mid-cast when I saw them. 4 of them, maybe 50 yards downstream. I hadn't heard them approach, no footsteps, no voices, but there they were, 3 men and 1 woman, all in dark clothing. Not hiking gear or fishing stuff, more like heavy coats and boots, even though it was almost 70 out. They were just standing on the opposite bank, watching me. I raised a hand, half out of habit, half out of courtesy. One of the men nodded back, the rest didn't move. I kept fishing, pretending not to care, but every cast felt forced. I'd look up between the drifts as they'd still be there, barely moving. They didn't talk, didn't pull out phones, just stared. Finally, I reeled in, nodded again, and climbed out of the river. As I walked back to my tent, I kept checking over my shoulder. They hadn't followed, but something about them felt off. Not threatening exactly, just wrong. I sat at camp for an hour, making some tea, listening. Around 4 p.m., I walked back to the river just to see. They were gone. Not a sound, no footprints on the opposite bank, just emptiness again. I shook it off, fished until sunset, and figured they were weird locals or some culty hikers playing games. Whatever, I was alone again. That was all that mattered. After dinner, I got this itch to go back out. Moon was up. I'd never night fished here before, and something about the stillness made it tempting. I grabbed my headlamp and rod and a beer and wandered back to the river. That's when things started to feel really wrong. The woods were dead quiet. Not just quiet, silent. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Like the whole place was holding its breath. I chalked it up to nerves and stepped into the river. Casting by moonlight is tricky, but kind of peaceful. You lose the finesse and start going by feel. I lost track of time pretty quick, just sipping beer and drifting dry flies in the current. Then I heard it, branches snapping. Not loud, not close, just somewhere behind me. I spun around, headlamp off, waited, nothing. Just trees and mist from the water. But when I turned back to the river, there were footprints. In the shallows, 20 feet upstream. They hadn't been there 2 minutes ago. No way. I froze, staring at them. The water was shallow enough to see the silt. Freshly disturbed, soft ridges still settling, bare feet, deep. Someone had just walked into the river, watched me, and left, but I hadn't heard them. I backed out of the water slowly, keeping my light off, and turned to head back to camp. That's when I saw the woman. She was just standing off the trail, maybe 15 feet away. Same dark coat as before, hair wet, no flashlight, no shoes, just standing there in the trees, staring. I didn't speak, didn't ask what she wanted, I just moved, fast. I don't even remember getting back to camp. 1 minute I was standing by the river, the next I was yanking my tent zipper shut and clutching a knife I'd brought for cooking. My breath was ragged, ears straining for footsteps or whispering or anything, but nothing came. Eventually I turned my headlamp off and just sat there in the dark, blade in my lap. Sometime past midnight, I started to hear it again. Voices. Not words, just soft murmuring, like a prayer or a chant, faint and distant. And then the click of something tapping metal, repeating. I didn't look out, not once. I stayed zipped in until the sun came up, knife still clutched tight. When I finally stepped outside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for one thing. Right in front of my tent, pressed into the dirt, like it had been done with a hot brand, was a perfect bare footprint. Toes slightly curled, heel deep in the soil. Whoever made it had stood there a while. I packed in 10 minutes, left the tent behind, left the cooler, left everything. I never reported it. Who would I even tell? A barefoot cult watched me fish at, all night. Doesn't go over well with local rangers. I haven't been back since. Sometimes I dream about them. 4 people, faces blank, waiting at the opposite bank, watching. Always watching. I've always loved the water. Growing up near the coast, sailing was something that felt more natural than driving. So when I proposed to my fiancée, Zoe, and she said yes, I suggested we take a little engagement getaway on my uncle's old 28-foot sailboat. Just the two of us. Quiet, romantic, off the grid. We set out from the marina just after noon on a Friday, sun high in the cloudless skies. The sails snapping crisp against the breeze. We were heading toward a quiet cove I'd visited years ago, somewhere people rarely anchored. No cell signal, no towns nearby, just water, trees, and silence. By sunset, we'd reached it. We dropped anchor, made a little dinner, canned Chilean wine, and sat on the deck under a blanket, watching the stars burn their way through the twilight. Around 10:30, we went below deck, zipped into our sleeping bags, and drifted off to the sound of lapping waves and cracking wood. That should have been it. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. I couldn't say why at first, just opened my eyes and felt something was off. The boat was still gently rocking. I could hear Zoe's breathing beside me, steady and soft. But I also heard something else, something faint, a thump. Then another, followed by a quiet metallic clink. I sat up slowly, heart already beating faster. Though the small porthole above my bed, I could see movement, a shape. At first I thought maybe it was a bird or something, brushing against the hull. But then I heard it, again, clink, like a hook on metal. I nudged Zoe. Hey, wake up. She stirred, blinking. What? I think someone's outside. She froze. What do you mean? Before I could answer, the sound came again, this time closer, like footsteps on the deck above us. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3 steps. Zoe's eyes widened. I put a finger to my lips and reached for the flashlight near the small kitchenette. I didn't turn it on yet, just gripped it like a weapon. Then we heard the door to the cabin start to creak. Not all the way, just enough to let in the faintest draft. I whispered, "Stay here." Zoe grabbed my arm. "Don't." But I had to. I crept up 3 steps to the door, and as quietly as I could, peered through the tiny crack. There was someone standing on our deck. Not a ranger, not a fisherman, just some guy. Late 40s maybe. Stringy hair that looked wet, like he just pulled himself out of the ocean. He was wearing a dirty green jacket and jeans. Barefoot, holding a small duffel bag that he placed softly against the side rail. He hadn't seen me yet. His head twitched like he was sniffing the air. I ducked back inside. Zoe whispered, panicked. "What is it? Who?" I mouthed, "Some guy." She started to cry silently, and I motioned for her to be quiet. I didn't know what he wanted. Maybe he was in trouble, but nothing about this felt like someone needed help. He hadn't knocked, hadn't called out, he just boarded us. I heard him move again, more footsteps. He was walking around now, slowly, like he was looking for something. Then the creaking stopped. A moment later, the door opened more. I flicked the flashlight on and slammed it against the door with all my weight. It banged shut. Zoe screamed. I scrambled to jam one of the kitchen stools against the door like a makeshift wedge. He pounded once on the outside, then silence. We didn't breathe. For nearly a full minute, nothing happened. Then came the sound of him walking away. I risked a look through the porthole. He was climbing back into a small black dinghy tied to the side of our boat. I hadn't even heard him approach. He paddled back towards his boat. It was maybe 50 yards out, low and rusted, sitting in the dark like a floating shadow. No lights, no name on the hole, just this lifeless, quiet thing. We waited until the horizon turned gray with morning before we even opened the door. He was gone, but the duffel bag was still there. Against Zoe's protest, I grabbed it with the long boat hook and dumped the contents onto the deck without touching anything. Inside were ropes, a hunting knife, duct tape, a rag, and a bottle of pills. No food, no wallet, no keys, just tools. We got the hell out of there. Even with no wind, I fired up the little outboard and motored for hours until we were well past any chance of that guy spotting us again. I didn't say much, neither did Zoe. We reported it when we got back to the marina. Coast Guard took a statement, but we never heard anything after that. They didn't find the boat, said maybe it drifted, maybe the guy had mental health issues and wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Maybe. But I still think about that night, about how quiet he was, how deliberate, and about one detail I didn't tell Zoe until weeks later, something I can't forget. When I looked through the crack in the door, he wasn't just standing there. He was crouched by the cabin entrance, ears pressed against the wood, listening, smiling.